We will explore three basic drawing tools in this session of instruction. The first one will be the line command. Then we will look at the default method of drawing arcs. And the last command that we will use is the circle. These are very basic drawing commands, and you can do quite a bit of work with just some very simple tools. Later on we'll get into some of these more sophisticated tools. In addition, we need to know how to remove things from our drawing area. So we will be visiting the erase command. One of the other areas that we need to talk about besides the command line, by the way, the command line is probably your most important communication tool when working with AutoCAD, simply because the command prompt is actually asking, the computer is waiting for the user to tell it what the user wants. In this case, I want a line, and if you notice, when I select the line command, it will appear on the command line. And once there's another prompt that appears after I selected the line command, because the system wants to know where is the first point of this line that I want to draw. I can choose any point because I'm just doing random work here. I'll just start choosing points, and as I pick points, notice that at the command line you will be prompted for a next point, and a next point, and a next point. Okay, another area to take a look at while you are working is this area, this bar down below, because this is usually called the status bar. We will be talking about these settings on this portion of the status bar. We won't be talking about any of these other settings. We will do that later on. But if you move your cursor within your drawing area, you will notice that these numbers keep changing, and what it is doing is it's tracking your location of your cursor, and those are actually the coordinates displaying as to where you are at any specific time. Okay, and then also there are some settings here that have to do with how you prefer the system to be working at any given time. For example, if you look at my drawing area, it's got all those block grids, and perhaps you may be working on something where those aren't really necessary. So here's where you turn them off. You notice that this little button that shows the little grids, and it shows grid display. If it's blue, that means it's on, but if I click on it, it turns those grids off. Okay, there are some other areas that are defaulted to be on, and sometimes, depending on what we're doing, we can turn those off. If we keep picking points, I will continue to draw my line, and of course, AutoCAD is a great doodling tool, but we really don't want to do much of that. One of the points I want to make is, as you're picking points, say you picked a point here, and if you did not intend for the point to go there, you want to see if there's a way to back up to the previous point. That is easy to do. If you strike the letter U on your keyboard and the Enter key, it will go back one selection point at a time, and it'll step backwards, and you can resume. Maybe you had an erroneous path going, and so you can go ahead and continue to select points. Okay, now how do we end the line command? Well, we can end the line command several ways. The first way is, for example, I started at this point, and I selected points throughout the drawing area, and this is the last point I've selected. If I type the letter C on my keyboard and I hit the Enter key, what it does is it assumes that what I want to do is I want to close the object that I was defining with all of these selected points. So after you close the object, in most cases this will be a polygon. Once you close it, that ends the command and you're back at the command prompt. That's one way of doing. Now we talked about this erase command, and maybe we just want to keep our area clean while we're just rehearsing. And so let me show you some selection tools. For example, if you click just anywhere, not necessarily on an object, but just anywhere on the drawing area, and you stretch your pointing device to the right, you'll get a blue box. Okay, this is called a selection box. What the selection box does is it selects objects that you enclose completely within it. In other words, if I select at that point, everything that was completely enclosed in the selection box will get selected. Now these objects are being selected for further operation. Okay, for example, if I want to erase those objects, I can erase them. You remember we talked about the undo command? You can undo and erase, and it'll restore those objects. Then we have a redo. Yeah, we changed our minds. Yes, we want to erase them. No, we don't want to. We can argue with ourselves. Okay, so that's a window selection box. Remember that on a window selection box, the objects have to be completely within the box to get selected. Notice that this line was not completely within the box, nor were these two lines, so they weren't selected. There is a way to select more efficiently, I believe, and that is if you pick towards the left hand. It didn't really matter where I pick, because what I want to do is I want to stretch. Now the box that I stretch is going to be to the left. Okay, now this is known as a crossing selection box, and a crossing selection box will select any object that's within it, or the objects don't have to be completely within it. As long as the objects touch the box, they will get selected. In this case, they all were either in the box or they were either intersected by the box, with the exception, of course, of that line. If I wanted to select it, I just do a crossing selection in this manner and it would get selected. Now I may want to erase those, and then I may want to change my mind, and then I may want to change my mind again. Okay, go ahead and practice these, because you will be using undo and redo quite a bit during your work session. Now we talked about the closing a polygon, and let's go ahead and redo the erase and draw a line that does define a polygon. A polygon is a 3 or more sided enclosure. So I will create this polygon, and then we'll type the letter C and we'll close it. Now if we don't want to necessarily create a polygon, we can create a line, and if we want to end this line without creating the polygon, I can do a couple of things. I can strike the escape key on your keyboard, and that ends the line command. I can also do another way to end the line command is selecting points, of course, to create the line, and at this last point I can strike the enter key, and that ends the line command. So there's lots of ways to terminate the line command. Another way to do it is, might as well show you all the ways, because you may want to use one or the other or all of them. Another way is if you take on your pointing device, there's a left button and a right button. If when I was selecting all of these points, I was selecting with my left button on my pointing device, commonly known as a mouse, and if I want to access a way to end the line command, I can strike the right button on my mouse, and that's going to give me something called a shortcut menu. And a shortcut's got several options. Enter would work the same as hitting the enter key. Cancel would be similar to the escape, or there's also a more tricky way to cancel something, and it's called Control C. Also, there's an option for continuing the line by selecting previous selected points. So for example, if I select that point, I really don't know where that point is, but if I select it, it actually goes back to that point. Hit the right key again, and you can close the polygon like we did before. You can undo a line segment at a time. Snap overrides is something we're going to talk about. For example, if I want to go to the endpoint of a line, I can select endpoint, and then it gives me a little box at the endpoint of any line I select. So that specifies that there's an endpoint of a line there. If I select it, that's where it's going to go. Back to the shortcut menu, we can move our object around with the pan command, or we can, and then we can exit the pan command, or we can zoom the object, which gets us a little magnifying glass, which means that if I hit my selection button on my pointing device, it will come closer or further depending on which direction I move. If I move up, it'll get closer. If I move down, it'll move further away. Hence the plus sign and the minus sign on the little icon that you see. You can zoom to a very specific area. For example, I want to go into a very small area here, and I can define a window and it'll go right to that. I can zoom to the original location, or I can zoom to the extents, which is any place that there is a object, it will try to window into those objects. In this case, it's windowing such that the whole object fills the drawing area based on the aspect ratio that's required. Then I can just exit the options, and notice my line command is still active. So I already know how to terminate the line command with the shortcut menu. Is as good as the others. That keeps me working with the one device. Now there's a scroll wheel on your device that also facilitates zooming in and out of an object. So if you turn your scroll wheel, that will be similar to having selected that zoom. It's a little bit more efficient than that little zoom, real-time zoom is what they call that. Now I can also pan by taking my scroll wheel and pressing on it, and of course I'm able to move my object side to side or top to bottom, similar to moving it on my desktop. So that's about as much as I've got to say for now about the line command, and then let's do a selection and make sure we clean everything up and rid ourselves of those lines, because the next object or the next tool that we're going to explore is going to be the arc tool. And I there's quite a few ways to do arcs, and they have to do with start points and end points and angles and whatever. But for this go round, we're only going to explore the default way of drawing arcs, which is 3 points. If I pick a point and another point and a third point, that defines an arc. And I can keep doing it by re-accessing the command point, second point, third point. Now if I strike my enter key, that usually repeats the command, and if I strike the enter key another time, that continues the previous arc, whether I want to go in the opposite direction or the same direction. I can continue doing or setting points on that arc on lines that are curvilinear. Inner gets me to, and that helps me by not having to find that endpoint. But you can use an endpoint snap and find that endpoint easily. This is just a little bit more accessible, since all you have to do is strike your keys. You could hit the right key and repeat the arc command. Okay, and I think if you do the right key again, it would be similar to striking the inner key, and so it will continue the arc. To draw circles in AutoCAD, I can select the circle tool located on the ribbon, and following the prompts, which are requesting a center point and a radius point. Once I've invoked the circle command, I can hit the inner key and repeat that command, therefore selecting a new center point and a new radius point. I can also repeat the command by striking the letter C and enter, and re-invoking the circle command following the prompts, center point, radius point. If I need a circle with a diameter, I can invoke the command, select the center point, and then the letter D on my keyboard, followed by the enter key, and then supplying the diameter of the circle, 5 inches in this instance, and I should have a 5-inch circle. I can draw a line 5 inches long just to see that in fact that is a 5-inch circle, and I believe that's close enough.